All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking what is basically an ancient, high-stakes political thriller. We're going to see exactly how King David survived a massive rebellion. And spoiler alert, it wasn't just with swords and shields. He used a highly sophisticated, completely covert intelligence operation. We're talking double agents, psychological manipulation, and hidden heroes who literally changed the course of history.
Let's kick things off with this chilling quote from Psalm 55. It really captures the raw emotional sting of the inciting incident here. David writes, "It is not an enemy who insults me, but it is you, a man like me, my close friend in whom I confided." You see, this wasn't just some standard political crisis. This was the ultimate betrayal by a trusted insider, striking right at the very heart of the king's inner circle.
So that brings us right into phase one of our debrief, the ultimate royal betrayal.
With David's son, Absalom, stealing the throne and forcing David to flee Jerusalem, the absolute deepest wound came when Ahithophel defected to the rebellion. Now, Ahithophel wasn't just any advisor. This guy was David's most brilliant counselor. In fact, his strategic advice was treated with such reverence, it was literally as if you were consulting the very word of God. So, overnight, the rebellion suddenly gets its hands on lethal, top-tier insider intelligence.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates our first key concept for this explainer, counsel warfare. It proves that the real war here wasn't initially fought out on some muddy battlefield. No, it was fought right inside the council chambers. It was a strategic battlefield where competing advice, psychological manipulation, and raw access to intelligence were literally going to determine life or death for the king.
Which leads us to phase two, the covert spy network. To survive this, David does something amazing. He builds a precise, highly compartmentalized chain of command. Look at this relay. He sends his absolutely loyal friend Hushai straight back into the palace to play the ultimate double agent. Hushai's whole job is to feed false confidence to Absalom and extract intel, reporting directly to the high priests, Zadok and Abiathar. Now, these priests act as an untouchable intelligence hub right inside the city. Then, to get that intel across enemy lines, an unnamed female servant steps in as a crucial covert intermediary. She takes the information outside the walls to the runners, Ahimaaz and Jonathan, and they sprint through the wilderness to get it to David. It's just a flawless relay of information.
All right, let's look at phase three, the warfare of counsel.
So, picture this. We're inside the rebel war room, and Absalom is looking at two drastically different strategies. On one side, Ahithophel offers this terrifyingly surgical decapitation strike. His plan? Take 12,000 men tonight, strike while David is exhausted, and kill only the king. It's brutal, but it's brilliant military efficiency. But then we have Hushai, our double agent, who counters with a plea for delay. He argues, no, we should mobilize all of Israel into a massive army that you, Absalom, can lead personally into a glorious battle.
Now, Hushai's entire goal here is simply to buy David time to escape, and he pulls it off through absolute masterclass psychological manipulation. He paints David not as some tired fugitive on the run, but as a highly dangerous, totally enraged warrior. He says he's like a bear robbed of her cubs. He completely spooks the rebel forces with the threat of a hidden ambush, all while totally playing to Absalom's massive ego with the promise of this grand theatrical victory. He literally uses Absalom's own vanity as a weapon. So why in the world did Hushai's objectively worst military plan actually win out? Well, the sources point to a concept called judicial abandonment. Basically, God weaponized Absalom's own vanity and pride to override sound military logic. Absalom chooses the glorious delay over the surgical strike, and without even realizing it, completely seals his own doom.
Now the tension really spikes. Let's move to phase four, the narrow escape.
Let me ask you this, though. When those young priestly runners, Ahimaaz and Jonathan, are actually spotted by an enemy informant while getting the message, how do they survive? I mean, they're deep in hostile territory, and Absalom's men are suddenly hot on their trail.
The answer relies entirely on the quick thinking of a totally unnamed, brave civilian woman. Hunted deep in enemy territory, the runners flee to a courtyard in Bahurim and actually climb down into a dry well. This completely ordinary domestic feature becomes their salvation. The woman of the house brilliantly spreads a cover over the well, scatters some grain on top, and makes it look like just a typical area for drawing food. And when Absalom's death squad shows up, she coolly misdirects them, just casually saying, "Oh, they crossed the stream." It's such a profound reminder of how overlooked individuals are absolutely vital to the whole operation.
And because of this flawless hidden network, the timing aligns perfectly. Hushai gets the message out under the cover of night. By the middle of the night, those messengers survive the hunt at the well and deliver the urgent warning. And right as dawn breaks, David's entire camp safely crosses the Jordan River. Ahithophel's trap literally closes on thin air.
Which brings us to our final debrief. Phase 5. God in the Shadows.
After escaping, David arrives at a place called Mahanaim. Now that name literally translates to two camps, and this is incredibly symbolic. It signifies that while, sure, you could only see David's exhausted, terrified physical camp on earth, they were constantly operating alongside God's unseen, protective, divine camp.
This perfectly illustrates what the sources call covert mission theology. You see, divine sovereignty didn't just magically teleport David to safety. Instead, God's protective decree operated directly through the gritty reality of human effort. It worked through Hushai's strategic deception, through complex intelligence gathering, through the timely obedience of those runners, and, crucially, through the ordinary courage of a woman at a well. Human effort and heavenly decree just working together in perfect, hidden harmony.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. If the ultimate director works through hidden human agents, through whispered conversations, double agents, and ordinary people hiding fugitives in wells, how much of history's grand stage is actually decided right there, in the shadows? Definitely something to think about the next time you look at the major events shaping our world. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring the history hidden just beneath the surface.